Here we are. And Brian Kramer, welcome to Live Talk with Becky Chernek. And it's certainly a pleasure to have you here with us. And we are going to talk about how do dealers handle putting F&I online? How does that all work? And before we get there, even a little bit on your background.
So I started off as a lot porter at an Oldsmobile dealership.
Okay,
wow. A long time ago. Selling StarCraft, got into sales there, GMC, Oldsmobile, and selling StarCraft conversion vans and all the exciting stuff of Oldsmobile Alero. So a lot of people on this call probably won't know what any of that stuff is, but was fortunate enough to meet the Germains early on. And actually before the Germains, I got an opportunity to be in F&I when I was 19. And I think it was good timing because I knew how to use a computer for my Commodore 64 days as a kid. So I think it wasn't necessarily because I was so talented. It was just because I was in the right place at the right time. But then a couple of years later, I went to the Germains, and luckily, for me, they had two dealerships at the time, and that was in, 1998. And 10 years later, they had, 30 plus.
Wow.
And so that was another great timing, explosive growth, and left to go to AutoNation for a little while in 2011, and then came back to the Germains in 2016.
Yep.
After a few assignments there, and I've been loving Naples, Florida ever since.
Well, it's a good place to live, that's for sure. Naples, Florida, right, is a very nice place to live.
And I've got an amazing team.
Okay.
It's best team around. I put them up against anybody in the country, and and I go to battle with them any day of the week.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that team, because you've done some radical things that I'm sure that probably your team is what at first kind of wondered, like, what's going on? Like, has this man lost his mind? We like you, Brian, but you are really making me do stuff I don't necessarily, I'm thinking outside my comfort zone here. So I want to talk to you first about, there's some things some changes that you made, you and your team, when COVID first hit two years ago. Talk to us about what happened with that. What did you have to do different?
The news started happening. Obviously, everybody remembers what happened in March of 2020, and everything started coming on really quickly. And obviously that was like a tipping point. It went from everything's fine to a week later, let's start holding off on vehicle allocation deliveries. Let's pump the brakes on this. We got to turn off the advertising. The world's coming to an end. All that thing. So in times like that, obviously, in every organization or any company, they're going to go to their immediate supervisor. Hey, what's going on? What's the plan? So communication obviously was mission critical at that point. And with our management team, we're very, very tight. We all got into a, one room and said, here's what's going on. And there was definitely some concerns, some legitimate concerns. My service director said, look, I've been through this before with the recession. She was proactive and said, this is what I want to do with expenses on this. We need to be proactive on this. She said, I'm not saying that we need to do all this stuff, but just in case, here's a good, better, best, worst case scenario. So a lot of the people hadn't been through the recession. And I think a lot of the people in our industry are young enough that they haven't been through something like that. And they didn't know how to handle that crisis. So that's the time in my mind that leaders should lead. And I told them, I said, all the stuff that you've been making fun of us about, and why do we have to do this, and why do we have to say discipline, and all this stuff, it was built for this. And you're completely ready. We've been waiting for a moment like this, because this is, like in the recession or in this situation, that's when you can grab market share. That's when there's always innovation. And as Wendell Hardy and I were talking about this morning, you never waste a good crisis. That's and true. There's as many bad things as there's so many good things that come out of it. And I said, when else are we going to have this kind of time to be, because we're typically spending so much time sawing, we don't ever stop to sharpen the blade. So I said, let's just whiteboard it and let's just go step by step on a process map and figure out what do we want it to look like. Because when this thing opens back up, whenever it is, I want to hit this thing running. So we started talking to our agency about how to advertise remote test drives. So the second it opened up, we launched that. Because TV, we could get a 5x rotation for the same price because nobody else was spending money. And how do you go on offense when everybody else is on defense? And I think that's the key. So we just storyboarded it all out. If somebody wants their car appraised, well, we don't currently do that. Okay, we got to figure that out. What if somebody wants to do their paperwork offsite and let's figure out how to not even have paperwork. And we finally had the uninterrupted time to be able to sketch all that out. So while a lot of other people were taking every other week off or enjoying this or doing this or freaking out, hiding in the corner or whatever.
Probably enjoying a little bit of time off, I would say, Brian.
Right. And instead, all of our managers voluntarily, which is not, I'm sure what everybody thinks, well,
because it's a good team. Right?
Yeah. And they said, what do you need? And they weren't looking at the clock or what's the days off. They were everybody was working towards a common goal because we wanted to be able to make a difference in the industry.
Get back on track as quickly as we possibly can. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's grab a Starbucks coffee.
Or a few.
Or many, and do what we need to do to go ahead and make an impact. And okay, so I'm sure that there were other dealers that were also thinking through this and this digital retailing type, to engaging customers earlier on, letting them know, hey, by the way, we'll do it your way. We don't much care. We'll do it, we'll offsite delivery this vehicle. We'll even, in which I find extremely impressive that you even thought through the digital signing of offsite delivery through, I think either it was Dealer Tracker Route 1. I believe that it's through the Route 1 that you put that in place through. And I know that they were working through some of that as well and offering the e-remote, and then of course the uploading of the dealer docs, if you will. So when you put all that into place, that's remarkable because I don't know that many dealers. I mean, maybe there's some larger groups out there that did do that, but there's a lot who didn't.
And a lot of them did. I think that what I find is that we start off by CDK. We actually do, the majority of it are now through Route 1, but it keeps on changing, and it'll change again. And I think that it's like a I don't even know what you want to call it, symbiosis of it's a moving, flowing thing. It's not a static thing anymore where you've got this chain of forms and this is the way it works, because every other industry is changing just as quickly. But what the most important thing in my mind is the non-negotiables. So even when we had it, now I'm beating my head against the wall because not everybody was doing it. 80% of the people that I'm getting this contract coming in with, I'm like, why are we still doing this? And I'm getting extremely frustrated because we were working around the clock and putting, 50, 100 hours into this. And now we're not going to do it after everybody said they would, which it's my deal. But I when that happens, I take it as somebody told me a lie and now they're lying to my face. And I get probably unjustified, passionate, emotional, pissed off, whatever you want to call it. So, but I got to also realize that they don't also know maybe what they're committing to or what I'm hearing. So I just deleted all the forms out of the paper form chains, and to put them back in CDK is $800. So when you burn the ships in the harbor,
that's
like Cortez,
yes,
there's one way to do it, and then you don't have to have the conversation anymore. And now everybody looks back and they go, "Oh yeah, that was a no-brainer," but it wasn't a no-brainer at the time. It's a very scary thing to do that because you don't know what's going to happen. It's terrifying, and everybody tells you, "Well, we got to have," and you're either doing a cannonball or toe dipping it, but toe dipping it doesn't
work.
Yeah, it doesn't work the same way. You have to be committed. And that's why in any situation, like when you burn the ships in harbor or any other analogy you want to use like that, it has to be done like that because there can't be another option. And you'll never know what it could be until you eliminate good to grab great.
So here's the thing. I know that there's some dealers out there who've tried it on, who, they thought through this and they're like, it's not a bad idea. And unfortunately, they did tip their toe in the water, and they didn't necessarily go all in. So you have the upper, I guess, the dealer level who says, hey, this is what we need to be doing, but yet we don't have complete buy-in in management. And it's as if there's like two conversations going on. How do you, I mean, I think you said it. Here's how we handled that one. We just nipped it. We took the harbor out, and we took those options away.
But we did it after we had everybody in a room and said it. And the problem is that in business and life, people don't raise their hand. They say, look, I'm scared of this. I'm worried about this. Change is scary to me. And I don't want my numbers to go backwards temporarily on a J curve. I don't know what's going to happen, whatever. Typically, you get a GM in the room. Okay, so we're going to do this. Everybody on board? Oh, yeah, great idea. And then there's another meeting right after the meeting where everybody's going, what the hell is he thinking? Like what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
At least here, my guys will tell me, gals will tell me to my face. And starting with my GSM, our service director, and they'll say, Brian, that's batshit crazy. And okay. Yeah, and many times they're right. So walk me through why. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of times I have to agree with them. And then, okay, I was just going off the rails for a minute. But on a lot of them, we now say, here, sell me on why this won't work, instead of me selling somebody on why something's going to work, because that just creates artificial harmony. So when you ask somebody, hey, walk me through and poke holes in this, why won't this work? If there's not a good reason, then at the end, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to do it like that minute. On this date, that's going to get unplugged, and that's going to be no more. So you got to get acclimated to it. Make sure you do it, because there's going to be an Outlook reminder. And when you try to log in that day, that will be no more. So hopefully we're ready. And if there's any bugs in it, let's fix it before then, not right at that moment. And I'm blessed to have the team that's adaptive to that.
You are. And it is a tough way to go, because, and just even going back to when we first implemented menu selling in the stores, AutoNation, it is, because they were scared to death. They looked at me like I got 10 heads. I'm like, why in the world would I do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why am I being upfront with customers? And then on top of it, you want me to meet customers at a salesperson's desk in the middle of a freaking showroom. We don't do stuff like that. That's mortal sin. What are you talking about? And they were scared to death. It just made no sense to put everything out there for the customer to see.
And well, if we don't put it out there for the customer to see, there's a lot of other things we haven't put out there for the customer to see, like pricing, invoice, and then Edmunds comes around, KBB. So we create all these other entities, right? We didn't put interest rates on there, so that now all of a sudden there's all these interest rate calculators. We didn't put trade values online. Now we have CarMax, Carvana, and Vroom. that forget about Edmunds, KBB, and all the other trade in marketplace with Auto Trader that were generated from our unwillingness to be able to be transparent. But you create all these cottage industries that keep on sprouting up. And what's the next one that's going to happen? F&I. If we don't figure this out as an industry, then somebody else is going to come out of the woodwork, and there's going to be another Rocket Mortgage or somebody else that tries to disrupt this space. And if we don't figure it out, it will be our fault as an auto industry as to why it happened.
So, okay, you brought this up. I mean, I understand change is difficult, and especially what's in it for me. And if it's going to affect my pay plan, I'm going to have another issue with it. How are you going to handle that? Right? You're asking me to change up anything and everything that's made me really good at what I've done, that I've had to be trained up to do for years, or however long that person's been in the business. And now you're asking me to do something completely the opposite that I've been trained to do, that made me really good at what I do. And also now, how's that going to affect my pay plan? And what do you say?
I would say it's the same question that every restaurant owner, every other business was faced with, right? When it came to the pandemic first kicked off, As all that stuff was happening and everything was coming on, they had to figure out how are they going to have people pick up food. If they couldn't have people dining in, they got to find a way to adapt. If people are taking all your trades and you can't get in at the auction, you're going to have to figure out how to acquire cars off the street. And that's what car dealers do. We're resilient, innovative, and we figure it out. But we can't sit there like a squirrel in the middle of the road and, oh, should I stop? Freeze. You're going to get run over. And
Amen.
we cannot get run over. This is the most innovative time in history. We got to go on offense and quit being risk averse and playing defense. Nobody wants to work for somebody that's risk averse, and salespeople don't want to have a finance manager that doesn't. They want a finance manager that says, "Give me the ball. I'll call the customer. I don't care if they're here. I don't care where they are. I don't care if they're in Scandinavia." Which happened out with us the other day. I'll still sell them some products. I got you. Give me the ball. Now, there's a lot of other conversations that have to happen in terms of they can't, like everything else, promise always they'll call you back in 5 minutes or they'll get you into the virtual F&I office in 3 minutes. There's got to be clear expectations set up, but they got to get over that. It's the same process. It's just like in Zoolander, it's the same look. There's no difference. It's still the interview. Menu presentation. Overcoming objections,
right?
But it has to be that way, and we find that it's the same or more profitable as the other way. No different than Instacart, DoorDash. That's not the cheapest way to buy groceries. It's the most convenient, and the more convenient we make it, we find the more profitable it is, and it's a win for the customer. It's a win for the associates. It's a win for the dealer. It's a win for and the F&I provider.
So customers like the sense of ease. They don't want complicated, right? Don't complicate my life. My life is already complicated enough. I just want to do something easy. And this is what happened with Amazon. Amazon created a way for me or everybody else on this planet to be able to buy and make life easy. So it just stands to reason that we are going to make that buying process much easier to process through. And when you do,
it's more profitable. The most profitable mattress company, selling most mattresses, is the retailer, not Serta, but is Purple, and they don't have any brick and mortar stores. They're looking at it, but of all the things that you wouldn't buy, Warby Parker glasses. They can now do. They found an AR augmented reality way to try them on. The Zappos. The whole time of my entire career, one of the closes was you wouldn't buy a pair of shoes without trying them on, would you? And now as everybody is justifying why people shouldn't buy shoes for decades, that Zappos figures out just by taking care of customers and making it convenient, to your point, they sell more shoes than anybody else in the world without trying them on. And if we don't figure this out in the finance piece, I guess if you think you can't, like Henry Ford says, you think you can or you think you can't, you'll be right. So you can either find a solution or not find a solution. Either way, you're going to prove your point. But I'd rather prove it profitably than try to, be cut off my nose and spite my face.
Well, yeah. So I know it's it definitely is a scary thing to try on something new. And I know that, and I'm going to say something here. So, here I go again. But I know that dealers are making a ton of profit right now, right? And hand over fist. And some of them are like, why in the world would I want to go ahead, change anything that I'm doing? Because right now we're killing it. We are killing it. So is it a tough time for dealers at this point to really change up? Because really what happened to you was that you took advantage of an adversarial condition. You didn't have, it sort of kind of made you pivot to something different. You were proactive in that. And you didn't stop, which made a big difference. Other dealers stopped in their tracks. So now they're profitable. It's like all bets are off. I've got my blinders on. Why should I even think to change right now?
Well, one main reason is the effortless way. Everybody's profitable. Everybody's selling a lot of cars. All the cars they have. I would say that our dealership's doing it more in a more effortless way and having more fun because it's literally so easy now with the almost too easy with the way that it's all set up. But that's obviously not enough to cause that level of change. You got to have foresight, you got to have some vision. Like Wayne Huizinga, when he was at Blockbuster Video and everything, and they were at the peak, they were at the apex, which is where the auto industry is right now, right? And he sold Blockbuster. And like, why would he sell Blockbuster? And then the people that he sold it to had the opportunity to buy Netflix for $40 million, right? And then, well, that's too disruptive. That's gonna, upset a bunch of the legacy people, and let's just hold off. And Netflix, who wants to really buy, videos like that anyway, or rent videos like that? And there's a whole story about that, obviously, with the Netflix story. But they had that opportunity, and then Wayne takes all that money, and as well as anybody, because you were there, takes all that money and invests it into AutoNation and creates AutoNation. And did he have to do any of that? No, but he basically made himself not obsolete anymore. And by doing that, he did what we should be doing in the auto industry because he saw it ahead of time.
And, so he certainly did. And he was an out of the box risk taker, thinker. And he was so before his time. I mean, he was so futuristic. And
what about the rental video, movie rental places that were mom and pops all over the place that got affected? Well, that's never going to happen. They could have gotten on board. Netflix was trying to do the same thing, and nobody wanted a piece of it. And everybody that had a Blockbuster franchise, if they could have traded it for Netflix franchise, would have said or did say no. Same thing with Kodak, Polaroid. It's going digital. Digital's not the future. Like you and I talked about earlier with Pixar, the animators. I don't want to have a piece of Pixar. Nobody wants to watch a movie on a computer that's made by computers that feel full length. Or you can go back to 1937 with Snow White. Nobody wants to watch an animated picture. Instead of shooting holes in why everything won't work, take a look to see how things could work with all this emerging blockchain and cryptocurrency. I mean, there's the metaverse. There's so many amazing things that are emerging right now. And the media loves to just blast it and bash it instead of, just like they did when the internet came out, instead of embracing it and seeing it as this world of opportunity. How do we sell F&I products in the metaverse? I mean, that's what I'm thinking, the team's thinking, instead of, all the other headlines. Is this the end of salespeople, which we've been seeing since, for the history, since I've been alive? Is this the end of F&I? Is this the end of this? End of auctions? And, people are still going to buy cars, trade cars, buy finance products, but they need to be buying them from us where they know somebody instead of buying them from Ice-T on a 3 a.m. TV commercial.
Well, actually, right. So we don't have to necessarily bring up PVR numbers, but I want to talk about that F&I gal of yours from New York and that conversation that you had, because I've also traveled and I've met some of the most interesting individuals in this country and other countries. And in Quebec, I know someone who is very effective when it's not a male, when it comes to online presentations. And the man he just swears by them. And he says, you know what? I'd much rather have a virtual presentation than I would in person. And it's screaming. So, and then I know F&I people are like, oh, I don't think so. I'd rather have that customer in the box, and just want to control that deal. So you have an M&A gal that I'd love to be able to meet and have her on my live online webinar event coming up in February. So we have to figure out how do we make that work. But talk to us about this. What happened?
Her name is Dora.
Okay.
She's worked with us in sales, managed our service sales drive team.
Awesome.
We had a dozen people back there, helped us build that up. But I will say, as a precursor to that, the lowest person in the last 3 months, everybody's above $2,000 a copy, with minimal chargebacks.
Good job.
We got 9 F&I managers, but it's always a very tight race.
Yeah.
Because they work together as a team, a true team. And I know a lot of people, oh yeah, it's the team. But I mean, I'm talking, they know that they don't have to worry about somebody else, taking a deal from them. Every one of them has their back. They back each other up their voicemails with if there's a cancellation that comes in. It's not, hey, oh, you're taking away from I mean, it is a true unit that trusts each other, that works together. And it's a beautiful thing. I've only seen it a few times in my life, but when it happens and you know what it looks like, it's amazing. But I was talking to her the other day because this month has the most cash deals, the most remote virtual deals, and I want to say she was at 28% of her reserve was coming from, or her profit was coming from reserve, and everything else coming from products.
Just saying.
And she's always done a good job. I go, this month you're doing the most cash, the most remote. What's and you're still running the highest PVR. So what's the difference? And she said, you know what it was? She goes, it was in my mind. I was worried about what others were doing, and I don't need to worry about them anymore. And it was kind of like, to me, like the Neo in the Matrix.
That's
when Morpheus said he goes, so you're talking about being able to dodge bullets, and he goes, there'll be a point where you don't have to. And I think she's at that point, to where it doesn't matter if it's a cash deal, doesn't matter if it's this, and they're all amazing at that. Like you hand any of them that deal, they're going to get on the phone, and they don't deviate. The process doesn't need to be. It's no different than when salespeople had to take an internet leave when they were used to taking a floor up. It's just they have to get out of their comfort zone. That's the way the world's going, right? It's still insanely profitable if they just embraced it. And I mean, they're making a lot more once they figured it out. So it's not going away. It's like internet departments. Oh, you think internet department is just going to be a fad, or phone ups are just going to be a fad? People still want to buy that way. And if you make it convenient, you make it simple, fast, and easy for them, they'll buy more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, the only way I can relate to that is, again, when I had this individual in a workshop, and so the dealer sent one of his other F&I people, and he went back to the dealership, and which I didn't know at the time, but he didn't implement anything, and his performance didn't what? Change. Nothing happened. So the dealer says, okay, I want you to go to Becky's training, to her workshop. And it's like, why? Why do I need to do that? So-and-so's PVR, nothing happened with my partner over here. And why are you sending me over there if nothing happened? So he's like, because I really believe in what we're doing and where she's going with this whole thing. And anyway, so he's like, well, I'll tell you what. If that's the case, and I give him credit for doing that. It's got a lot of what. Anyway, it turned out, and he told me, he goes, I told the dealer this. If you're making me come to this workshop and you're making me change up what I'm doing, you got to stand by me. And you have to make sure that if I fail, you're there, that I've got a pay plan.
Which is really what everybody works. That's the fear that nobody wants to talk about, right?
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's my pay plan, and you want me to change up after being so successful. You want me to listen to this gal talk about this is complete opposite of anything that I've ever done before.
No, you're right. That is the biggest problem that nobody talks about. Nobody talks about the friction or this, or I don't know that many people want to buy. Look at grocery stores. How many people went to Instacart and DoorDash and all that other stuff? That's just the way life works now. But to say that people in the car business, nobody wants to do that, is flat out wrong. Is the pay plans aren't aligned towards that.
It is. It's got to be, right? And so that's what I said to him. I said, okay, well, cool. Well, good. I'm glad the dealer has my back and your back. So here's what we're going to do. He goes, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to do everything that you say by the book, because I gave the dealer my commitment. I'm going to do it. And he gave me the commitment that he would support me. He goes back in there, and I'm not, the guy's from Ohio. No, Idaho, because I remember potato. Idaho. He killed it. And,
it's no different on the phone or in the showroom. If you don't do the interview, and it doesn't matter where you're at, online, on the phone, it's not going to, it doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
Or you don't present the menu the same way. It doesn't matter which one of those three you're in, the result, I mean, it just comes down to the basics.
Done it. It's like, I wish I was rocket science over here. I think, the wizard, but, that frankly, it is a process. It's being more consistent in that process and making things easier. And I think you also mentioned that is that this is allowing us to stay within that process. And it's just the easier you are with it, the more confidence you have. Let the technology work with you, not against you. Don't try to do a workaround. Use it as a benefit. And you'll see a higher improvement or result because of it.
We had an F&I meeting yesterday morning, and I was asking around, and I'm always asking them, I drive my people crazy. So we were up this much. What do you attribute that to? How do we make sure we don't go backwards? What's the main driver of it? And Carlos Seminario, one of our all of our F&I managers are amazing, but one of our F&I managers, he said, he goes, I think that an undervalued thing is all of this automation has taken away all the administrative stuff that we hated about the job. And now all we have to do is just focus on the customer and find out what they want to do, connect the dots, sell products. And when you don't have to worry about all the paperwork and the forms and all that stuff. So I'm sure it was, painful to go through that whole journey to get to that point. But now that it's there, just being able to focus on the most important things, because I think, because the minimization of chargebacks is massive, because their chargebacks have never been lower and the growth's never been higher. And obviously it's the market, but the market doesn't control our chargebacks.
That's right.
So, and that's a result of, discipline and not overselling and not trying to get too creative and too complicated, and just keep it simple. And as all of our team says, just have fun.
Just have fun and keep it simple. One more last question before we go ahead and close today. So, what digital retailing platform are you utilizing for this whole thing? What's really working for you? And so I've had a conversation. You probably are very familiar with Steve Apicella. And he talks about the life cycle and the connect to disconnect. And there's a lot of that going on. But it seems that you've been able to go ahead and capture and really make a robust digital experience journey and putting that all together. Now, I'm not sure if you can actually deliver the secret sauce, if you will, but in close, could you talk through a little bit? What did you do for that?
And we still have a long way to go. Like we talk about Steven's product, like we're not at that point. We're
not there all the way out there yet. But
it's not like 360.
We're not there yet, right? In that regard, but you definitely came with a solution that helped, because we have a lot of dealers who say, "I'm on digital retailing, Becky. I do a really good job with it." We've got our leads. We're letting them walk through that digital process, and they're selecting the vehicle, shopping, they're determining payment options, etc. We've got all that, and they get to select some products and stuff like that. However, which way they want to buy. But here's what I know for sure.
So
I don't know if we're doing soft pulls, we're doing hard inquiries, any of that's really taking place, and then it stops. And then the customer comes into the dealership and it starts all over again. It's as if they've never been online, ever shopped on that particular vehicle, or even no one has recognized the payment option or anything else that they selected. And that's the real world.
No, you bring up a great point. So they also don't have Jared Kilway, who's my chief digital guy, who can connect all that stuff in ways that I don't know many can. And got Wendell Hardy and the rest of my management team that can guard the process to make sure it's staying on the lanes.
That's awesome.
To your point, I didn't realize fully, because I was, I've got everything digital, until I started blasting commercials on television saying, this is step one, step two, this is how easy it is. Until people tried to do that and it didn't work exactly the way, it was the new form of bait and switch. So then they showed up extremely upset, wishing that I had never advertised it to begin with. And they said, well, we've been buying, stuff off Amazon since 2012. We just figured you finally caught up. And at that point, we were more.
It's a good example.
We were more ahead of the industry than most, but we still had so far to go from what they weren't comparing us to the dealer down the street, which is what I was doing. They were comparing me to the other places where they buy things, Instacart, DoorDash, Amazon, Best Buy online, any of that stuff, Southwest Airlines. I mean, you can pick whatever industry you want, and all the automation. And we're so far behind as an industry with all that stuff. Mortgage industry is like paperless, and we're not, and it's not because of, there's 31 states that are paperless, but the other states maybe can, one form of wet ink or 3 forms.
Yeah.
But it's really, for the most part, us that's causing all that, right? Or the excuse of, well, yeah, our state does, so we do all the signatures of wet ink instead of just those 3 to at least begin the journey on it. But to tell you on connecting all that stuff, it has to be easier for the associates, has to be easier for the customers. And a lot of times we think we're making it easier for the customers, but we don't make it easier for the associates. And it's because there's nobody there like Jared that's connecting all this stuff so that when they want to appraise their car, it also populates the CRM. And so the salesperson doesn't have to do that. So making it so that whatever the DMS is, the CRM, the credit, the Dealer Track or Route One, Darwin or Maxim Track, whatever those vendors are, as it goes through that journey, making sure that when this does this, it connects to this and it pushes correctly, and taking the time instead of saying, yeah, it's close enough, and you're living in a straw house when you should be building one out of mortar. If it doesn't work and it's not easier than the old way, they won't do it. They'll just sabotage it, and then it'll tell you, and then the iPads and all that stuff will go in the drawer, and then we'll go right back to paper and the way we used to do it. And they'll say, yeah, we tried that, but it doesn't work here in this market, with this climate, with these customers, with this demographic, with this excuse and that excuse. It's all, and it ultimately comes down to friction points that we as, NADA is coming up. And there's going to be a lot of dealers that are out there, see a shiny object, let's sign up for that. I've got Jared's like my speed brake or e-brake out at those things, because he's like, look, hold on, to connect that to that, just pump the brakes. You need to think this through, because if not, it's like being in Vegas. It's a lot of sensory overload. And that's what a lot of people do, is they say, that sounds great. They don't get the vision, get the buy-in, poke holes in this, tell me why it won't work. And, maybe we shouldn't have bought that to begin with. If they just do that and figure out, what do you want it to look like in the end? And then, okay, let's just start with the appraisal tool. Does the appraisal tool populate the CRM? Does the VIN and all that stuff carry over on whatever interest rate they quoted? Soft credit pull, like you said. When is that? When's the hard credit pull? And it's got to be clearly defined, all the way down to any person that touches the deal. The office, salespeople, first pencil strategy, like we talked about. And then you can build a compliant model through the whole thing, so you also don't have to audit a deal or worry about if it's compliant or not, because when the credit's getting pulled. If not, there's an adverse action notice going out. And that whole tech stack integration flow with anything. I mean, Route One, Dealer Track, with most CRMs, most appraisal tools, all that stuff, if it's connected correctly, which takes hundreds of hours, I get it. And most people don't know or don't want to do it. But if it's done correctly, it's just 3 buttons, push, menu, it pulled in the credit, it pulled in, and the customer then is doing like a self-checkout at Target, or when you go to a doctor's office, hey, do you want to wait an hour? Or you can click on this link, fill everything out, and you can have an express doctor's appointment, right? Or they'll do teledoc, which is like virtual F&I. So
it's amazing how that works. I like that. Don't get me wrong. I like
everybody
it a lot.
does. Our customers do
stay
too.
there, I go over here. It's all good.
But how would you know if they didn't offer it to you?
Well, we also talked about, and I know I promised to, I know your time is very limited, but we talked about, let's face it, GMs are the stakeholder, if you will, of change. They are they're the go-to.
The blocker or the gate.
How do you change their mindset? How do you change them to say, you know what, enough's enough. I'm liking everything Brian is saying. We're done. Let's figure this out. Why can't we figure this out? What do you think it's going to take to get that stakeholder, that GM, thinking change? Because it's not going to be me. I mean, what do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be?
I know what it was for
the
me.
marketplace is going to make a difference.
It was a customer coming in and sitting outside my office and telling me in graphic detail what that we violated their digital trust, and they thought it was going to be one thing, and they said this is just a new form of bait and switch, which was not my intention. And a lot of people look at it as like a lead generation tool, and it can't be a lead generation tool. In many cases, it's better, and I actually move much slower now. In many cases, it's better to not even do it, or to just not do, to say we're going to do that 3 months from now or 4 months from now, and not even begin that journey, and just focus on, okay, so if somebody wants an appraisal, over the phone, let's just do that step, and then we'll advertise that step, and then we'll train on that step, and you do everything in conjunction with that. To try to boil the ocean all at one time is a very frustrating thing, and I would not recommend it. If anything, I would say, work on getting a sight unseen appraisal. It's not really any different than over the phone, right? I mean, we've been doing this for decades. People from out of state want to buy a used car. They want it shipped somewhere. We've already done this. We've been, everybody goes, oh, there's inventory shortage. We've been doing reservations on hot cars and PT Cruisers and FJ Cruisers and certain Jeep Wranglers and whatever the Mercedes AMG that's the toughest one to get, and Corvettes all the time, Camaros E28, and certain trucks, Raptors. It's no Broncos. It's not like it's some new fad that just came out. There's been high demand vehicles forever. We're just now having to do it for everything. It's the same process, and the same thing goes for F&I. It doesn't change online. It doesn't change on the phone. It's just the same ones in the showroom. They just have to pick up the phone. And just like with salespeople, they don't like picking up the phone. F&I managers probably don't like picking up the phone as much as they like face-to-face. Sure. But if it's the same or more profitable, instead of fighting it, it's like when menu presentations came around, all the people that fought it, what happened? They either got out of the business or they used the menu. I mean, it's coming, and people just need to adapt to change. And there's a lot of money to be made for those that embrace this and thrive with this.
Yeah, I think it's like I said earlier, and I wrote a blog on LinkedIn, and I was really coming from a place where I just felt like the technology doesn't replace the person in the seat. That's not what this is all about.
Can I touch on that to close it
yes,
out? Yes,
please.
We have tons and tons of data, and I won't bore everybody with it, on where the customers bounce as they're going through to buy products automated. Everybody, like you and I were talking about earlier, say it's going to be the end of the world. F&I managers are going to be computers and bots and AI or whatever, and that's true to a certain point. So they can get you to what we find is and we've built it out with videos and as much information as possible, and they get us an 18 to 25% service contract penetration, and we're finding ways to be able to move that a little bit more to tee up for when they come in. But we also look at it as our F&I team. They're like the Navy SEALs of the dealership, right? Because after the salesperson already got the objection, after how many pencils, that customer said, I'm not buying that, if it's $2 more a month on that vehicle, I'm walking. And they got to assign the menu. Other than that, anything keep you moving forward. And they do all those things. Now that's welded up. Okay, that's it. He didn't 50 cents more, he would have walked. Okay, so now you're going to give that deal to an F&I manager, a $3,000 service contract that's going to raise the payment, whatever, $60 a month. Here you go, champ. They just
go for it,
right? And they get it because it makes sense, right? But you're sending them into a Mogadishu, hard situation, and the F&I managers of the dealership are the ones that, after everybody else tapped out, there's no more money on meat on the bone. Okay, I'm going to go get you another $3,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is. And that mindset has to apply to the phone. It's got to apply to everything. And the salespeople have to see that hope in their F&I managers, their F&I team, that they know they walk up, hey, here you go, it's teed up, good to go. And we're not selling stuff they don't need. It's, we have a lot of people that come in thanking us. There's a few handful that are upset because they didn't buy tire and wheel, but most of them come in hugging.
My favorite product, tire and wheel. But
it's the least profitable for whoever has a tire and wheel company, right?
Yeah.
But but on the service contracts, they come in and hug people. Oh my God, I don't know what I would have done with all these computers and this and that. I had no idea, that could even happen. And I would have never been able to budget for it. But if we don't get that figured out and how to, you're not only doing a disservice to the salespeople and all that stuff, but the juice comes in with those Navy SEALs from 25 to 60 to 70%. And I think that's a very important note, that it's not, those guys aren't trying to, the 25%, that's the price of admission. That's already there when they put the sign in the franchise, and it's there.
Yeah.
But the best will get 60, 65, 70. And that's the future of F&I in my mind. And I could be crazy, wouldn't be the first time, but it's to plus it up.
I think it is a plus it up. And I think that, again, these are the tools, techniques, technology is the tool to help and support and enhance. It's not to take away. And just like, and it's funny that I keep going back to this menu but the analogy is so good, because it was like, what happens if that takes away from my profitability? And here's the thing I always said, I promise you, it will never take away from your performance. It's only going to enhance it. You can't mess this up. It's only going to enhance it. And that is exactly what we're talking about here. It gives you the tools to be able to talk the customer language and reduce all the time it takes to buy a car and to process the deal, which, like you said, gives me more time to focus on that customer.
Yes.
That's it. That's the secret sauce. And there's some stuff that's involved, and we got to do more fact-finding homework. And every store, from my background, I've been in a lot of different stores, a lot of different situations, that's for sure. But every store is different. And so there's no such thing as a cookie cutter. What you do may not necessarily be with the other store's process.
Agreed.
Right? But what they have to do is they have to first, before I sign on the dotted line that I'm going to bring this technology into my store, does it do what I think it's going to do? Is it going to integrate with my store culture? And is it going to enhance our practices?
And are the analog processes in place? Because digital should just enhance it. If your analog processes don't work on a customer that's not there, digital will only make that problem worse.
And they'll work around it and not use it. And that's right.
Prove to you why it won't work.
And it's like, if this doesn't connect to the other, I'm not doing it. I have enough to keep me busy. One thing I found in that year and a half in the trenches again was the fact that there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of integration. We've got to get involved into our deal sooner rather than later. And the last thing you need is one platform not talking to another.
No, it needs to be simplified. If it doesn't make it simpler, faster, easier, we don't do it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes if we don't think through that whole process and make sure, like you said, that it's integrated, not only but every platform is talking, or each technology is talking to the other.
In the same language. Like a Rosetta Stone.
Like Rosetta Stone in the same language. Well, I want to thank you so much, Brian, again, for taking the time, because I know you're a busy GM, and, for Germain to allow you to be here and a part of my live talk with Becky Chernek. I really like the idea of where the automotive industry is going. I've made it a career like you have, And so I think it's amazing what you've been able to do and the impact that you've had in the auto industry, as well as Germain Auto Group. So, but I want to thank you again for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's do this again. And for those that may not be aware, I did have Brian Kramer, who was on my podcast, Make Your Ebonite Profit Stick. And I hope that you take a moment to listen in. It's a great podcast. So guys, I want to thank you. And let's see if we can't close this down here and make this happen. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.